Hello and welcome everybody to another episode of the Lernen podcast, which, as you've already noticed, is going to take place in English this time around. So I guess it's the Learn and Let Learn podcast this time. And episode number 5, and very excited to have some very special guests with me. In my opinion, the perfect two people to have for a first episode in another language, in this case English, and I'm sure there's going to be other languages to come in the future. Today with me are Sam and Josie. Welcome, you two.
Hi.
Hello.
It's great to have you with us, and really looking forward to a great conversation with the both of you. And yeah, our viewers and listeners don't know you like I do, so maybe we can just start with a short little introduction. Josie, who are you? And yeah, maybe you can tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. I'm Josie. I'm from Berlin, so I'm not sure if I'm the perfect person for a non-German podcast, but I'll try my best. And I think I'll talk in a second on how I came to the Lernwerkstatt. And, yeah.
And isn't Berlin famous for like a German city that speaks people speak more English than German sometimes?
Yeah, that's true.
So I think it works well in that case. Great to have you with us today. And Sam, looking sharp in those headsets.
Thanks. And yeah, I think I would agree that it can be challenging to learn German in Berlin because English can be so easily used. So yeah, I'm Samuel, also go by Sam, and I'm connected to the Lernwerkstatt through Loesje, Loesje e.V. And yeah, I came to Berlin. I'm originally from California with a Latino background. My father's from Mexico, my mother's from El Salvador. So I have that Latino background. Now living in Berlin. And I did a master's here, master's in intercultural conflict management in Spanish from Ali Salomon Hochschule. So yeah, that's how I got here and eventually got connected to the Lernwerkstatt.
Awesome. How long have you been in Germany, in Berlin already?
So I got here in 2016, so now 6 years.
All right, all right. And enjoying it so far from what I've gathered.
Yeah, definitely. I'm really enjoying it, facing certain challenges here and there,
Yeah.
but I'm up for it and ready to face those challenges and figure out how I can stay here longer.
Yeah, that's great. And Germany doesn't make it easy on anyone, not even on the Germans, I would say. Or Josie?
Well, I think Sam has it a lot harder than me. At least I don't have to, get involved with the Ausländerbehörde, from which I hear nothing good. Oh my God.
Yeah.
I'm sorry for everyone who has to deal with them, honestly.
Yeah, that's always a struggle from no matter who you hear about Ausländerbehörde, it's always involved with some kind of a struggle. But yeah, so Sam, you just mentioned Loesje e.V. E.V., of course, is the German abbreviation for a registered nonprofit organization, I guess would be the English translation, eingetragener Verein. And interestingly enough, I'm not sure if we've ever actually touched on this in the podcast so far. Die Lernwerkstatt is a part of a space where we actually share the office. So we actually share our rooms with other organizations, and one of those organizations is Loesje. And we can touch on that, I'm sure, today a lot more in depth, and you can give a nice little introduction to what they do, and also your involvement with the organization, the connections with the Lernwerkstatt. Those are definitely some things that I want to touch on today. But
Yeah.
let's start from the beginning. Josie, you introduced yourself a little bit, and it would be great maybe if you could tell us a little bit about how you found your way to the Lernwerkstatt.
Sure. So it kind of started in 2019. I was part of a project that that was for young unemployed people, to do an internship, firstly abroad and then back in Germany. And so I did that abroad internship in Italy. And when we came back, Corona started, so it was harder to find something in Berlin to intern at. But yeah, somehow I told a friend of mine that I was looking for an internship and that I wanted to do something with workshops and giving workshops and whatnot. And that friend had a friend who had a connection to the Lernwerkstatt, and kind of introduced me. Like, I was very shy at first. I was not sure if it's like the right organization and whatnot,
Yeah.
but that friend of a friend happened to write an email where he was like, "Oh yeah, I can just mention you in that email and ask if they think you could be a fit." And so yeah, it started from there. I did that internship at the Lernwerkstatt and figured that it's a very good match for me. And a few months later, I started a Bundesfreiwilligendienst there, which is a federal voluntary service, which I'm still doing. And so and as you mentioned, it's a shared space with also Loesje, and so that's how I got to know Loesje and Sam, and
Yeah.
that was
Yeah.
my way there.
It happens pretty quickly, I think, in our space, right? That the different projects kind of interconnect, and the community, it's not just exclusively people from the Lernwerkstatt network. It's kind of a very mixed group of people from the Loesje, from outside projects as well. People who come and just use the space, different kind of sub-communities. So I think that's something that I've always cherished a lot about the Lernwerkstatt, or the space in general, is that it just kind of brings people together very naturally. And I definitely remember that it didn't take you very long to open up to that part of the work as well that we provide. And it was really quite the coincidence, as many things are in terms of the Lernwerkstatt. But I think it was very clear early that it was a good fit, and that you felt comfortable, and you also had a lot to provide for and with the Lernwerkstatt. And I think a year and a half later, we can say, I think quite firmly, that it was the right decision for you and for the Lernwerkstatt. And unfortunately, your voluntary service is slowly coming to an end, but I'm sure we'll find ways to continue working together and keep connected. But you did also mention that you connected with Loesje at some point. Sam, you came to Berlin. Did you come first to study, or did you meet Loesje and started working for them straight away as well?
So I met Loesje towards the end of my studies, when I was close to turning in my master's thesis. I think it was, so I was working for, or I was working slash interning for an organization known as Imaginaries, which was focused on intercultural dialogue and using digital media to have culture and identity workshops. And I believe it was Ihab, which is connect, and I believe he's been a past somebody you've interviewed in the past for your podcast.
Yeah, Ihab was in our third episode, and we
Yeah,
also talked a bit about Loesje. But maybe just for the listeners and viewers who didn't catch that episode, you can just maybe shortly also introduce Loesje as an organization, just so we have that kind of clear as well.
yeah, for sure. So yeah, Loesje is an association where we focus on creative writing workshops to promote various human rights, environmental justice, topics on creating awareness on marginalized communities, on LGBT rights. So it's a little bit of all the social justice and human rights topics all mixed in that we promote. But we're also a collective of writers and activists using creative writing to create a poster with a short text that allows the readers to, when they read it, promote some kind of positive feeling, some kind of feeling of tickling the mind, but also being critical and also trying to have the reader be, give them a little bit of push, initiative, be independent, have solidarity. So that's what we focus on, and we also do a lot of international projects. So that's how the first time I got involved was through a call that Ihab shared, and it was focused on discrimination and migrants, which was really close to the thesis topic that I was writing on, which focused on environmental racism and discrimination that happens through laws that are put in place that are focused on the environment. So it just really connected. I really connected with Rola and the rest of the team members, and from there I was like, oh, they're a beautiful team. Just the connections they had, the communication, I really enjoyed it, and I then started getting involved more with the creative writing process, the workshop, and I'm still here.
Yeah, and you're a great fit, man. It really works well, I think, and you really have a lot, I think, to offer the project, and it's been really cool to see you kind of grow into it as well, and kind of shape it as well with your own thoughts and ideas throughout the projects. So respect, you're doing a really great job, and I always really love also the posters specifically. I mean, I'm a little bit less involved in the international youth trainings, although I did actually take part in one of them. I was in Sweden for an art project on human rights, which was really cool. So I was actually a part of one of those Loesje projects and really enjoyed it. Even got to play as an artist a little bit, experiment a little bit in some art, which was really fun as somebody who was trained as an engineer and so on. So that was really cool. And I love the posters. I think the posters are really kind of provocative in a good way. They make you think maybe deeply about a certain issue, or they just stir a certain emotion or a reaction. And I always think that it kind of brings people into motion, the way that you create these posters. And they're very aesthetically, I think, beautiful as well in the way that you play with the words and shape it. So maybe you can let the viewers and listeners know where you can find these posters and take a look at them. And then we'll add that into the description below the episode.
Yeah, definitely. So Loesje has a poster archive on their website, loesje.org. We'll definitely include that on the links below. But all Loesje posters are available there on the archive. You can download them in any kind of format you'd like, and they're free to download, to spread, share. When Loesje started, I don't think social media, it was founded in 83. So, social media wasn't what it is now. And it was intended to be posters that you could go and put on the street. Now we make a lot of stickers and different posters as well. We still try to, share those and stick them on walls and all of that as well. But definitely the viewers and listeners can have access to all of that. You can also check the Facebook page and find posters there as well.
I think Instagram as well, right? So the different social media channels, and
for sure.
The archive is definitely something cool because it has all of the previous posters. So if you really want to take a deep look, I guess that's the best.
Yeah, also from like the different groups around the world, like we have different Loesje groups, and or like but Loesje has different groups. Not all over the world yet, but we're working, or Loesje is working on it, and and I think these values that Loesje stands for is also like what connects Loesje and die Lernwerkstatt more than the physical space, right? It's all values we all share, you know, this humanitarian and, you know, peace promoting and whatnot.
Yeah, absolutely.
Creative.
I think there's that connection on the creative level, on just kind of the way we do things and bring people together. But also, I think in the depth of the topics and the issues, and really trying to, I think, ultimately make a change in the kind of, you know, humble way that we can do it on not on our own, but in together in collaboration with others. And it's awesome, Sam, how you describe it. You know, like it's such a long existing organization with such international reach, and how it obviously has to also adjust with the times and adjust to the different locations. So if you're doing a creative writing workshop in Slovenia or in Palestine, it's obviously going to, you know, be a different kind of process than if you're doing it in Berlin, Germany. And that's so fascinating with an international organization that's been around for so long, like Loesje has.
Yeah, and that's part of it. Loesje is aware that as humans, we come from different backgrounds, we have different cultural upbringings and different languages, and we express things in different languages. Some things don't get translated. So Loesje is very open to that, and is very accepting and wants people to do posters in their native language. So, you know, you'll find posters on, I think in right now there's about maybe 30 different languages. So yeah, that's part of it, you know.
It's also a big part of what makes it so inclusive, right? What allows all people of all different backgrounds to take part. And we'll get back to that topic, and also take a little bit of a deeper look into some of the work that especially you two have kind of worked on together as well, because I think that's really interesting how you personally have connected and shared experiences as well. But Josie, I'd like to take a moment just to talk a little bit about your involvement in the Lernwerkstatt. Could you maybe give the viewers and listeners just a little bit of an insight into what does somebody do in a Bundesfreiwilligendienst, in a federal voluntary service in die Lernwerkstatt? How can you picture that, basically?
Yeah, so I'm one of 2 Bundesfreiwillige there right now, and so I can tell that it's like very based on your individual interests and, you know, abilities. So like I have a wide range of interests, and I'm open to new learning experiences, and you know, and so like I don't have like one thing that I work on all the time, you know, that I'm like involved in different processes. And that's also what I find, like what I like about the Lernwerkstatt, that it gives me like a lot of opportunities to try new things, to try my hand in different things that I maybe have never done before, never dared to try before. But then at the same time, I was able to revive old interests and expand knowledges that I already had. So
What's something that you didn't dare to do before that you did with the Lernwerkstatt? That's fascinating.
What haven't I done before? Actually, honestly, a bit of the office related stuff, because I was always like, I don't want that. You know, it's like everything that involves me having like some kind of power, quote unquote, right?
Okay.
Like where I could make a mistake. I was always very sheepish about that. But also like fun things like creating a poster, not like a Loesje poster, but like again for the office, you know, just something to hang there as a sign or something. To play with different tools to create or manipulate an existing poster. Yeah, something that I never really found time for before, or like a reason, you know, to get into that.
Yeah, we recently refurbished. I think that's what you mean, right? We recently redid our. We have this at our space that we're talking about that we share with Lernwerkstatt and Loesje, we have this really beautiful big window pane, right? Really
Wonderful.
window
Yeah,
front.
that's one of
And
the things. That's where I
Mhm.
like created a poster for the Lernwerkstatt from scratch. That was something that, you know, like also I felt like so responsible somehow.
yeah,
Like
definitely.
because we're going to print that, like
Yeah,
there's money involved.
yeah,
But also like I for the trash cans we have, I changed the posters a bit, like what goes in which bin, and the posters that you usually find for them, all the stickers, they have like things like dirty diapers and stuff on them, and I was
yeah,
like, well,
yeah,
we don't have that in the office, but they were
yeah,
not
yeah,
things on there that we have, you know. And so
yeah.
I kind of, yeah, manipulate, damn it. I played with those a bit, you know, edited them, put in new pictures, took out old ones, which I didn't know I could do. And I basically had the most programs already on my laptop because I was always interested in it. I was always like, oh, I want to, you know, try photo editing someday, but I never got to it.
Yeah, you need a certain reason, right? And maybe
Yeah,
also like a real kind of direction of maybe have some importance behind it, right? Also to know that okay, this is
yeah.
meaningful and it's making a
Yeah, and someone
contribution.
else, you know, I need deadlines. I need someone to tell me,
And
you know, like
deadlines,
this
sure,
needs to
yeah.
be done.
Yeah, so that was my job to always be like, all right, Josie,
Yeah.
we need it by this and this time and so on. And yeah, it's fascinating because I think that's something that's really cool about our space is it's so dynamic that we have even just a simple topic of like recycling becomes something that we have to kind of structure and manage and enable in a very kind of specific way.
Yeah, but
Also,
that's again, that's part of our values. I feel like we are very eco-conscious and very, you know, and like different people in the different organizations have different values, like how much it matters to them. But I think we always try to cater to the most, like, oh, I want to do it all right, people,
yeah,
right? Like
yeah, yeah.
we want to give everyone the opportunity to do the best that they can, and like not get frustrated with like, oh, you're pretending to be so eco and green but then you don't recycle, right?
Right, right. And then also the fascinating aspect of how do you facilitate something even as simple as recycling in a intercultural community where maybe not everybody speaks the language. So if you have it in written words, what goes in which bin, that may not be understandable to everybody. So you kind of find a solution working with pictures, and you're like, okay, well, there's nothing that we can just take from the internet or from the recycling service company that satisfies our specific needs to what kind of trash is being produced or what kind of materials are being recycled. So that just kind of all of a sudden becomes into this really fun kind of project that is about all these different aspects and not just about recycling and waste in general, which is, I think, something really cool. And you did a fantastic job. And since then, the recycling has been much more structured and efficient, and people are definitely more aware of what goes where. And I think just in general also of the importance of it. And it's also cool with me because then when I'm working with the children or the young people in general, also it's a cool kind of little informal educational moment. I'll just tell them like, go look at the pictures in the bins and figure out which one it goes into, and then all of a sudden it becomes this little challenge for them to figure out. And it just is a nice way of connecting our projects that don't necessarily have to do with the educational work per se into it very kind of smoothly and informally. And I think that's also something that I really always respected about the Lucia approaches, was that it was a nice mixture of kind of formal, structured project work with a lot of space for informal learning and bringing people of different backgrounds and cultures together. Would you say that's accurate, Sam? Does that match with your experience, or?
Without a doubt, definitely. And while you were talking about, those little challenges for the kids, we also have a lot of international projects where we're getting a lot of participants from different countries, and just the example on the recycling and the waste is like, we don't do this in our country. Like
Yeah,
they find it so like, oh wow, it's so organized, and they still have trouble figuring out where things go, but it is something that they learn, and it's really fascinating to see that process happening.
You forget, right, that something like recycling is not omnipresent in all countries of the world, right? So it's also part of the learning experience of arriving to Germany. Like I remember the refugee situation in 2016, and I mean, right now there's something developing as well that will probably have a similar kind of context as well, and it's difficult for people to adjust to German society and all of the different intricacies. And recycling and waste management is one of them. You see it all over the city, but if you don't come from a country that has that kind of a concept, then you don't really know how to deal with it. And that just becomes something that you can kind of very casually and informally start to have some experience with by just spending time in our space, right? Or just being there for a project. We're speaking about these different projects kind of vaguely. Maybe we can talk about a project because Josie, you were initially there to work with the Lernwerkstatt, and then throughout the whole kind of time you spent in the space and working with us, you kind of naturally also connected with Sam and the work of Loesje. And if I recall correctly, there was also at least one, maybe even more, right, projects that you two personally worked on together. Is that correct? Maybe you can give kind of a little bit of an insight into what kind of project that was and what you kind of worked together with, because that's what I was really fascinated with, is that you two with very different backgrounds, with very different kind of ways of getting to the space and or like the initial reasons for coming to the space, and all of a sudden you're working very closely together on a personal and a professional level in the realm of these workshops. So yeah, share some of that with our viewers and listeners, because I think it's really fascinating.
Yeah, I think again why that works so well is that we all in the space have like shared values, and yeah, so it's easy to connect via that. I think the first project I did with Loesje was to be a participant in one of the workshops, right? The creative writing workshops, and it just naturally grew from there. Like
yeah. Our team is a very international team, and sometimes the hardest people to find are actual German people. So
yeah, that can be
That's
a
so
challenge
funny,
in
yeah.
all of Berlin, honestly. Like I have friend groups where I'm probably the only German.
Yeah. As we were
So
talking about in the beginning, yeah.
as we saw Josie more, we're like, oh, Josie would be perfect. Like, and
Your
yeah,
token
Josie.
German, so to say.
No,
Yeah.
but the thing is, like, she picked on Lucia's values. Like, she connected really, really fast with who Lucia was, who she represents, and yeah, she fit really, really, really well. And from there, we, she's been learning the creative writing process. She's also started to facilitate creative writing workshops. So she's improving those skills, and we worked a lot on a specific project known as decontamination, and I'll share with you as well links for that. So
Okay,
this
so
project,
the viewers and listeners can, everything you're describing, they can take a look at in the links that we'll provide below the description. Yeah,
yeah,
awesome.
and this project is focused on combating hate speech and discrimination in public spaces through street art, through a creative methods to, yeah, change or alter the narratives that we can see on the street. There has been an increase in, you see graffiti or writing on walls that maybe are calling for foreigners to leave, or some kind of hateful message. So with this project, we developed a website and an app um, that provides a lot of information on understanding how racism and how hateful speech comes to be, and what are some alternatives to how we can combat and provide a more inclusive and accepting narrative of culture and people. Josie, would you like to add anything?
Yeah, so exactly. So for the development, we also, as Loesje, like went to Slovenia and visited workshops there on like what is hate speech, how do I combat it, and how do I recognize it, because sometimes it's like so subtle, and sometimes I see that even in my friend groups, that someone makes a comment that they don't think is so bad or something, but I know, like, okay, but that's the starting point for a whole series of points that lead, you know, to something that is really undesirable. That it starts a thought process that just goes in the wrong direction. And yeah, and for me it was like very interesting to learn all that, and to communicate with other people about that. And yeah.
I have a question for you too. You do these projects generally on an international level, right? So it's like 2 or 3 organizations from different countries working together, and then you go visit each other. They come to Berlin. There's this kind of exchange process going on, right? This topic of hate speech, I think, is really a major topic of our time, right? Because I think what's fascinating, Josie, I think is exactly what you said. Like, really, at what point is it even noticeable that it is hate speech, right? And I think there's definitely also generational gaps, perhaps, or times changing where something used to not necessarily be deemed as something hateful that now is like, well, you can't say that, and that's hateful. And I think it has to do with the world becoming a little bit more open and accepting of all kinds of people. So this topic of hate speech, I think, is something that's really gotten to a level where I think it affects everybody, I would say. I mean, in the US, Sam, we had the whole Trump era, right? That, you know, may or may not be over, right? But definitely brought hate speech back into the forefront, brought it really into the media landscapes as well. And I think ultimately, from what I've heard, and even in Germany, we had it with the AfD and these different organizations that were really spreading hate speech on a very high and official level, even, right? Where you thought, like, it's unthinkable that that enters the political sphere again, and all of a sudden it's there. And then it kind of permeates into people's families and friend circles, and it's really something that I think people have difficulty dealing with often, right? And then what you're describing also is that it starts to appear more in the city landscapes. And I would be really interested to hear if there was big differences, or maybe more so similarities, between the experiences that people shared, say, in Slovenia, and their kind of ways of getting in contact with hate speech, and the ways that it shapes their city and their experiences in comparison to say, somebody living in Berlin, in Germany.
Yeah, we went around in Slovenia and looked at the street art there, and, you know, also for the app, we took photos, and so we have a map that's on the app and on the website, where you can photograph hate speech that you see in the open. And so since then we had more of an open eye for that, I think, because we were like actively looking for it there and then back here in Berlin. And
so you started seeing it more often as well, right? Because
yeah,
it's something that, I mean, I don't always look up at the landscape when I'm walking through the city, right?
Yeah,
and then all of a sudden you're more sensitized to it.
Exactly, it's a difference if you're like actively looking for it, or if you just see it sometimes. But like I saw it sometimes before. Like I legit saw swastikas in Berlin, like, you know, with adding, and that always kind of scared me. So that's why I also like this project a lot, because it at least gave me the feeling of having a bit more control over the situation, of knowing what to do. Because before that I would like see it and I'd be like, oh fuck, what am I doing now, right? Like, do I paint over it? Is that vandalism? Do I put a sticker there? Do I leave it? Right, which is like something that everyone needs to answer for themselves, I think, how they want to handle it. Because yeah, if you paint over it, that's vandalism, right? But like, do you want to leave it? Can you call a number where they come and clean that up or something? And
is that the idea of the app then also, to kind of inspire you to act when you see, for example, a swastika on a wall? What can I do? Oh, this really disturbs me, and this is really disrespectful. What can I do? And this app kind of gives you an opportunity to get into a constructive, active mode. Is that about right, Sam? Or
Yes, definitely. And to give a little bit more context, you know, our partners, our Slovenian partner is Ljubljana Pride. So they they primarily work with the LGBT community in Slovenia, and that's a community that has faced and is still facing a lot of discrimination, a lot of hate. And our other partner is INAR, which is an acronym for Irish Network Against Racism. And that's an organization that has a whole network of organizations that are working against racism, because racism is also something that is being seen in Ireland. So in reality, you know, racism is not something particular or specific to one country. It's happening in all over the world, you know. And it's great to have these partner organizations, because they're really, you know, in the trenches working against racism, and, you know, showing and training people how you can what kind of action you can have, what you can do.
yeah, also Loesje and these other organizations together are working on a handbook that I think will be released soon, with exactly these best practices on what to do if you encounter hate speech, you know, in the wild, so to say, or yeah, also how to train others on this. Like, yeah, what the organizations also do a lot is just training people, training to be aware, and, you know,
and supporting, because there is a lot of trauma, there is a lot of yeah, just it's hard issues for people to deal with, you know, especially if you're the one that's facing that discrimination. You know, if somebody is doing some kind of violence, you know, that can be super traumatic. So they are providing a lot of support, and yeah, giving people the power to change that kind of narrative that exists, and that, you know, that we're seeing in politics and in these like very common spaces. So that was one of the things that I really took out of these trainings and workshops. Kind of, yeah, okay, maybe I didn't know what to do before, but now at least I have a critical eye for it. And okay, maybe we can try this, or okay, let's slap a sticker on that and cover. And yeah, it was a really fun way of kind of combating hate, you know, like just very creative. Like, okay, what kind of word could we add to this message, or how could we change it and play with it to make it more inclusive? And also just seeing the comparison of okay, it's happening in Slovenia, oh, it's happening in Ireland, it's happening in Germany, oh, it's in the US, like, and then making the connections and the similarities, but also the differences. And then seeing the alternative ways of people kind of taking to the streets, or covering a hateful symbol. Yeah, all of those things.
Yeah, it was very interesting to learn like the different symbols that are seen as helpful around the world. Like I said, when I see a swastika here, I know exactly what it means. But like in Slovenia, we saw symbols that are not usually used here, like this. It's like a U shape, but like with a, right. So, and like that meant something there, and to learn the different hate around the world, also to see like what is most prominent here. Like most what I see is actually the ACAB or 1312 thingy, the all cops are bastards, which is also hate speech, like right? Which you can never tell if it's from the left or from the right, because both agree on that.
And then ultimately, does it really matter at the end of the day? Because if it's on a wall or something, at that point, I don't think it really matters anymore. Like, or there's no way of knowing, right? So it doesn't ultimately matter who put it there. It's there, and it's. I think also this idea of taking also a creative approach to dealing with those contaminations of the city, right? And I think that also you have that in the name of the project already, right? To kind of flip that and to make it creative and to do something with it that maybe takes out the sting that takes out kind of the hateful message out of something that is in that sense polluting the city landscape, right? And I think it's a really great example of how to get active and creative when dealing with really difficult and uncomfortable topics and issues. And I think that's also something that has really just naturally gravitated into the work that we do with the Lernwerkstatt also. I mean, it's not our agenda to necessarily touch on very difficult or political topics, but since we are an open community and people are allowed to bring in their topics and their issues, and really there's no boundaries there, it happens, right? So 2016, we had this refugee situation with a lot of people fleeing the war regions around Syria, Iraq, and it was really just a situation that really changed the society around us. And we were able to respond to it in a really kind of natural way with, as we do, a creative workshop or a creative educational approach. And this, at that time, it was the peace dialogues, right? So this concept of everybody's talking about war. Why not bring people together, and really not with much more intention than that, not much more structure than that, which is also a very Lernwerkstatt kind of approach, right? We don't have to overthink it. Let's just call it something and bring people together and connect and see what grows from that collaboration. And it was something that Alejandro, who was in the second episode, I think, who also does our English evening and does the work with emotional intelligence, which I think, Sam, you're also involved with as well, right? So the connections are all over, and the Peace Dialogues project was something beautiful, and it really resonated with a lot of people. Let's get together in these troubling times and talk and try to define for ourselves what peace is and what peace could look like, and then ultimately how we can do simple actions and be creative and bring maybe in small ways a little bit more peace into the world. And it's really fascinating how that was kind of just a natural response to the situation in 2016, but it was also kind of a seed that grew and sprouted and has kind of stayed enough above the surface so that now we have almost a similar situation with what's going on in the Ukraine, and we're able to draw on those experiences and also kind of revive these creative educational formats such as the Peace Dialogues. And as we speak right now, Alejandro is hosting a space for a new installment of the Peace Dialogues around the Ukraine conflict. And it's just something beautiful where, like, it's not really even our intention to deal with these topics, but it just happens in a way as, like, people in the community feel it's important and feel like there's a way we can contribute. And then that kind of gets put out into the world. And the Lernwerkstatt's able to provide the structure, the space, the material, the network, the advertisement channels, the social media channels, and so on, just to facilitate a project like that, right? And I think that's what's beautiful about Loesje as well, is that it's not necessarily the topic so much as the facilitation of bringing the people together. And even though we have differences and we come from different areas, how can we connect and find similarities? And that's really something cool to see. And I think, Sam, we also wanted to touch on a little bit about the kind of creative educational approach also that in what we discussed prior seems to also be a connection between Lernwerkstatt and Loesje work, because ultimately on a day-to-day, you would think these two organizations don't really have much to do with each other. But I think in terms of the values, as Josi has been mentioning, definitely something that connects us. But also I think in this kind of view of what education means and what education can be, is something where we're quite like-minded, or would you say?
Yeah, definitely. And to also get back to when you mentioned how kind of wars is like very violent act and cause a lot of destruction, you know, what we are all doing is kind of, you know, actually we're doing, you know, the opposite of what war does. You know, it destroys. So what we want to do is we want to create, we want people to, you know, give their perspective. And for example, the decontamination project, you know, that is something that ultimately we want it to be an educational tool for people, to empower people to um yeah, feel like if they don't know enough, they can rely on that resource, on that tool, that handbook, the application, the different organizations, and find support. um and you know, get ideas so we can go out and create and fill the world with with values that we can really connect to and that are completely unassociated with what war brings, you know.
Yeah.
So I think, yeah, you know, the decontamination project, um you know, if you want to have a workshop or kind of hold a workshop with youngsters, with adults, kind of introduce the topic of what hate speech is, how it's connected to discrimination, to racism, to show the the dangers of those kind of behaviors, then you can really use that the decontamination website and the app to get those conversations going and for people to start learning
Mhm.
about what it is, what racism is, and how to combat it, and what can we do to be more inclusive, to be more diverse and accepting of the cultural diversity.
Yeah.
um
And I love it, to empower people, right? I mean, we have this a lot, that people come to us and they're like, we want to do something, we want to help, we want to connect, but how do we start? You know, what can we do? We have no experience, and really, you kind of take that fear from somebody by providing them with these tools or inviting them to come join one of your projects or your workshops. And I think that's something that really we as the Lernwerkstatt try to do as well, right? We try to invite people in without prior experience. We try to take that kind of those barriers down of just trying it. Just go for it. Try it. We'll support you. There's a structure here that will, you know, catch you if you fall and help you back up and so on. And let's figure it out together. There's no master plan that we need to get started. Let's just see what we can do. And I love it because I can't get enough of it, to be honest. I mean, that's why 7 years in, it feels like I'm just getting started with the Lernwerkstatt. And I think with Loesje, 40 years in, it probably feels still similar. There's still so much work to do. And it's really this, I think, the epitome to me of grassroots work, grassroots education, grassroots social work. And it's really something that I think is really needed in society, and no matter what country you are, because that's really that level where people can grab onto it, that's not above their heads, that's not kind of connected with some kind of prerequisite, or you need a certain certificate to even come and join this project, and it doesn't really have anything to do with that. And I think, Josie, also you epitomize that as well, as somebody who didn't even necessarily have a connection to these projects prior, and you come in and you have your ideas and you have your thoughts, and there's this motivation that just kind of grows and at some point bubbles over to, I want to do something, I want to take part, I want to join, I want to get involved and be creative myself. And it's been really great to see you kind of grow into that role and connect with these projects. And really, to me, what's beautiful as well is to kind of bring those experiences also back to the Lernwerkstatt work. So you, to me, have been very much a bridge between the two projects, and it's been really, really great to see. And so, yeah, vital to, I think, also the growth of the organization is to bring in those new impulses, to bring in those new ideas, and to connect the people.
What I kind of feel for both the Lernwerkstatt and Loesje is both is a bit of a fill in the blank. thing, right? With Loesje, we have the creative writing workshop that we mostly do. Like we have some other workshops, but we don't do a ton of different workshops, right? So we have mostly the creative writing workshop, but it's like you choose the topic, you tell us what you want to write about, what you want to talk about, what is important to you, what do you want to get out in the world. And with the Lernwerkstatt, it's exactly the opposite. We have a ton of workshops, so it's like we don't have like, we are the Lernwerkstatt, we have this and this workshop, and you know, choose your poison, so to say. It's more like, what do you want to see in the world? Do that, make a workshop, make a, you know, whatever, a training session for that. So, but like both on a different level have the same, fill in the blank mentality, like, oh, it's not there yet, make it.
Absolutely,
right?
yeah.
And
on an educational level, I would describe it as we provide kind of a structure for people to fill in the gaps, as you said, right?
Exactly.
To what actually is being talked about, what actually is being produced, created. But it really is kind of something that over the years you learn that in order to facilitate that in an efficient way, it's good to kind of create a base structure to support it, right? Whether it's the space or having some facilitators as a team to guide the process. So Sam, you personally, I've seen you countless times working with the people in the creative writing workshops, guiding them through the process, step by step, asking questions, saying, all right, let's move on to the next phase, and so on. And I think that's really important because I think people need that direction in order to really express themselves creatively sometimes and bring in their thoughts and their ideas that may still be a little bit too unstructured to really make something substantial from it, or to bring it out into the open in order to connect with others, right, and other ideas. And I think that's really what I take away from the similarities of our projects, is we're really ground level facilitators, inviting people to express themselves, right, in collaboration with others.
Yeah, I think both inspire discussion as well. Like, like you said, it's sometimes hard for one person to, you know, have this fully developed plan of what to do next. And I think both Loesje as well as the Lernwerkstatt can be great places to develop that plan together with others, and to build ideas off of each other.
Yeah, absolutely. So you two, I think we're slowly coming to an end for our planned topics of the podcast for today. Is there something that you maybe want to pass on to the viewers and listeners before we head out? Sam, anything still on your mind, or anything you want to still kind of throw in?
Yeah. First of all, thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming. Thanks for being a
For
part
the
of this.
opportunity. And just ask the viewers and listeners to check out the Decontamination website.
So the links will be below in the description, on
Yeah, you
Spotify,
can
on
download.
YouTube, wherever you find us.
Exactly. You can download the Decontamination app and use those to explore the city. If you see any hateful speech or any street art that is inclusive and is calling for inclusiveness, then use those. And soon we will have the handbook ready, and we will also be sharing that. So
Where can
yeah,
someone find that handbook when it's ready?
it'll probably be available through the website
Okay.
eventually once it's there.
Okay.
So yeah, everything will be on the website. If not, then we will post on our Facebook page, Instagram page, and
Right. So
share
keep
it
an eye
through
out
there.
open on the different Loesje channels, and there's definitely more coming, and already great stuff there to check out as of now, but even more great stuff on the way. And really appreciate having you join us today, Sam. I think it's really been a fascinating insight into your work and also you personally, and definitely always for me an inspiration to hear about what you're doing personally, but also what you're making possible within the framework of Loesje. And really appreciate you taking the time to join us today. Josie, anything else you'd like to say before we head out?
Also, thanks for having me. It was a pleasure. I just want to mention Loesje, that's Loesje, even though if it's linked below, people might be like, oh, nothing here says Loesje.
That's true. Very good point. Yeah.
That's how Loesje is spelled. It's
Yeah.
Swedish, I think. No, Swedish?
No,
Dutch, huh?
Dutch. Yeah, I always mixed it up. So yeah, no, thanks for having me. It was nice.
Yeah, great. Yeah. We've been planning this for some time, so I'm really happy that we're able to manage to sit down. It's always a matter of organizing, right? Organizational. When does somebody have time to get three people on the same time, same place together is always difficult. I mean, we're lucky that we have the technology these days to kind of make it a little bit more interactive and
Pen and paper nerds know the struggle.
Yeah, no, I mean it's been really great, and thank you also, Josie, for sharing your insights on your experiences with the Lernwerkstatt as well as with Loesje, and a bit of your personal insights, and really great to hear about how much all of this also matters to you, the whole values idea and how important that is, and the different projects you've been a part of to give somebody a real concrete idea of what we're talking about, what is actually being done. Because that's also sometimes when you're talking about big topics like human rights or hate speech, right? It's something that sometimes is difficult to kind of grasp, right? What does it actually mean? It's such a big, all-encompassing topic. And I think we were able to give some really great kind of straightforward examples of
yeah, and I'm really thankful for the opportunities, like to learn about all of this and to tackle all these problems like creatively and stuff with both organizations, Loesje and the Lernwerkstatt, because that's it's great.
It's really cool, right? And we're all, I think it's easy to tell for the viewers and listeners that we really enjoy what we do. And we really do it with a smile on our face, even though they're very serious issues, right? But I think that's what connects us, is it's possible to have a good time doing serious work, right? And bringing something creative into serious spheres. And I think that's something that we all have grown to be a little bit specialized in, and personally grow and develop through the work as well. So that's really something that I wanted to highlight today with inviting you to. So thank you again for taking the time. And I'm certain that for the viewers and the listeners, it was a pleasure to hear you speak and share your insights, and really look forward to the coming projects, the handbook. I myself have to check out the Decontamination app a little bit more closely as well. And all these different links, as we mentioned, will be shared in the description below. Great point with Loesje, so that everyone knows, Loesje. When you see that written, it's Loesje, and that's what we've been talking about, the organization. And yeah, everything will be found in the description below. Also, contact us, of course, if you want to get in touch with anybody directly, or if you want to get involved as well, if you want to find out more about perhaps when the next creative writing workshop is and all these things. Definitely check out the social media channels, but also don't hesitate to get in touch with us directly. And also that information we'll be sharing below. Yeah, I think this is a nice time to wrap it up. And once again, much appreciation to both of you, but also much appreciation to everybody who tuned in, either listening or viewing us speak. And yeah, really looking forward to upcoming episodes, and also curious to see what other languages these episodes might be in. I think we really want to try to represent also the internationalness of our community, and maybe Sam something in Spanish.
Yeah,
sometime
definitely.
we have
That's what
a
I was thinking
strong
of.
Latino community, so maybe something in Spanish, maybe something in Arabic. I think there's definitely lots of different things that we can make happen. I know. I don't know 100%, but I'm pretty certain that we have also another episode coming up sometime around this one being published. So we should have two, this one plus another one coming out within a relatively short time span of one another. And obviously we do our best to keep these coming. And if there's any suggestions for ideas or topics that the viewers and listeners want to hear more about, please let us know, and we'll do our best to incorporate those. Yeah, so it's a wrap, and episode 5 with Josie and Sam comes to an end, and we wish everybody happy afternoon, evening, morning, whatever time you're listening or watching us. And yeah, thanks for taking the time. Take care, everybody.
Ciao, ciao. Thank
Bye.
you, Josie. Thank you, André.
Thank you, Sam. Thank you, Josie. Thank you, viewers, listeners. Take care until we meet again.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye.